Basketball, the Crossroads Classic. How long did that go on?
Since 2011.
Too long.
Was the first year of the Crossroads Classic. Some people, yes, would say too long, and it's kind of outlived its usefulness. As again, we talked about earlier, Notre Dame and Butler of 2021 are not Notre Dame and Butler of 2011, right? It's not that they have not quite lived up to the standard that Indiana and Purdue especially have set in this decade. And so it's tough, especially with Indiana. They've won this thing 4 years in a row. Indiana had the best record, has currently the best record out of all of the teams in the tournament in the event at 7-3. And they've won 4 years in a row, but it wasn't really gaining them anything in terms of national recognition, right? Like they were beating teams that weren't going to go to the tournament or were going to maybe be a lower seed. So that there was for Indiana and Purdue as well, it was what are we gaining from this, especially with a 20-game Big Ten schedule where that's decreasing your opportunities for out-of-conference games and then taking one of them and giving it to this Crossroads game that wasn't gaining you a whole lot and could lose you a significant amount, especially in the minds of in-state recruits. What is the gain here for Indiana and Purdue at this point?
Yeah, I said that a long time ago. That's the thing. It gained Indiana. Not only did it gain them nothing, it really cost them. They were not able to play in big time events that they could have been playing in. Could have been playing on a carrier, but they're playing the Crossroads Classic. Could have been playing against UCLA, but they're playing in the Crossroads Classic. It did them nothing. It did nothing. 0-0-0. And those teams don't need Indiana. Purdue, Notre Dame, Butler, they don't need Indiana. Indiana doesn't need them. That's just not it sounds good on paper, but it just, yeah.
It sounded much better when all four of them were Final Four contenders, right? And, I mean, Indiana has not been a Final Four contender for the last few years, but you get my point where all four of them at the beginning of a season could have gone to the Final Four in any given year, and that was the case for the early part of the 2010s. But I mean, the other part of it too is that you're not necessarily going to take Butler and Notre Dame off the schedule every year. You can play Butler in the Gavitt games, which is Big Ten, Big East. You can play Notre Dame in the ACC Big Ten Challenge, where you couldn't have in those events before. So you still might get to play some of those teams on a semi-regular basis. It's just you're not going to play them every single year or every other year. And so I think that's a significant part of this as well, is you want to play teams in your state because that's fun for the people in your state. It's fun to get your fans to travel to somewhere or vice versa. And those games aren't necessarily going away. They're going to have opportunities to play Butler and Notre Dame going forward, even assuming the Crossroads Classic does kind of go away here.
Tony points out, missed out on CBS Champions Classic, and Brent points out even more so, this is the best one. Indiana drove 75% of the revenue across that tournament, but they were only received a 25% split. So, they're driving that train, but they're paying for 3/4 of the fuel. It just wasn't a good deal for them. And like I said, it just did not do them any good. Didn't help them recruiting. It did them zero good in any way possible. So this is nothing but a gain to me. As the truth joins us, Robert Carter, how are you, sir? But I think this is a gain. It's a win-win. It's another situation where Indiana can start to get back to being a national brand, which is what they need to be and stay. And this is another step in that.
Yeah. And I think it's I always go back to 2012 in this Crossroads Classic when Indiana was ranked number 1 and their first loss of the season came against Butler in this Classic. That's just not happening anymore. Butler is not going to knock off the number 1 team in the country. It's been a while, right? So that's something that it kind of shows where the programs have gone in the last few years here.
I mentioned a minute ago. I mentioned was the Rights Bowl where they shot some of a League of Their Own, but as Jennifer and Dwayne both pointed out, no, that was Bossy Field. So many great fields down there in Evansville, but cool. But you can still go back and watch that movie, and man, it's been a while since I've been to either of those stadiums. But great stadiums down there. Getting back to what we were talking about, though. Which was what? I'm drawing
the Crossroads
Yeah.
Classic.
I'm. It is so. It is like 5 years past its usefulness. I mean, it is. It is not like just the last year or so. It is thing, and it always takes long to get out of that stuff. But scheduling wise, now is Indiana ready to turn that schedule over? I'm sure that the networks will be clamoring for that opportunity for an Indiana, because Indiana is still a name, and with the newness, CBS is will be reaching out. They'll be looking for those kind of marquee matchups. That's where they make their money. That's why they do those classics. That's why you play on the aircraft carriers, because people tune in.
Yeah, exactly. In Indiana, now obviously it only took up one portion of their non-conference schedule, but it does open up some opportunities for Indiana. And again, we talked about this earlier, but Scott Dolson said yesterday, and he didn't confirm that the Crossroads Classic is over, but he did say he is committed to having Indiana play in Indianapolis. They want to play games in Indianapolis, and that's important to them as part of their branding in state, right? And so you might see some games that are scheduled in Indianapolis, maybe against a Kentucky, who knows? But that's something that is going to be emphasized going forward, is making sure, even without the Crossroads Classic, if and when it does go away, that you're still playing games in neutral sites in Bankers Life.